All right, let's try this again. So today we're talking about energy moving between organisms, through organisms, and within an organism itself. So we'll first start with discussing the two types of organisms that there are on the planet. And those would be, as I'm sure you're aware, plants and animals. Plants are special because they have the ability to do photosynthesis, which means they can use sunlight to make glucose. Animals, on the other hand, have to eat. To get glucose. The only way they can get glucose is to get it from their diet. Both plants and animals, though, are going to use that glucose to make ATP. And both plants and animals are going to use ATP to do what they do. And this, what they do, we call metabolism. So plants are able to do photosynthesis, which means to use sunlight to make glucose. They then use that glucose to make ATP, and they use that ATP to do the metabolism that plants do, all the chemical reactions that plants require. Animals, on the other hand, have to eat to get glucose, but they still use that glucose to make ATP, and they use that ATP to do what animals do, animal metabolism. We can do this because of the laws of thermodynamics. The laws of thermodynamics say energy can't be created or destroyed. Which means we need to have a source, and that source for most of the planet is the sun. And it also says that we can transform it. But when we transform it, we lose some as heat. At least for biology, that's all we'll worry about. Losing some as heat. Heat's important. We use it to stay warm. We're warm-blooded animals. Together, the issue with, not the issue, but the reality of the laws of thermodynamics is you can't cycle energy. You have a certain amount going into plants. There's a certain amount that makes its way into glucose, and a certain amount that makes its way to ATP, and a certain amount that can be used to do work, but then it is gone. It's gone in the form of heat, anything left over. So plants have to have a constant source. And again, for most of the organisms on the planet, that source is the sun. So we have some other names for plants. Plants are also called producers. They are called producers because they produce glucose. They produce glucose for themselves to make ATP to do what they do. And they are also called autotrophs. Auto means self. Troph refers to energy, so self-energy. They are able to capture sunlight and store it in glucose, then use the glucose to make ATP and use the ATP to do their metabolism. So plants are also producers and autotrophs. Animals, on the other hand, are called consumers because they have to eat to get glucose. They have to consume glucose from other organisms. And they are also called heterotrophs. Hetero means other. Troph still means energy. So other sources of energy. They can't be their own source of energy. They can't do photosynthesis. All of this involves ATP cycling. We can cycle ATP because ATP is made of matter. So we use ATP to do work. And when we're done, we have ADP and a phosphate somewhere in the cell. The only thing we used when we did the work was energy. So if we can put that energy back, we can recreate the ATP. We can put this phosphate back onto these two phosphates. And that energy, whether you're a plant or an animal, is going to come from glucose. All right, I think that's a pretty good review of what we wanted to do. I will be posting some assignments today, a brief formative for this section, and then tomorrow we'll pick up with the second part of the chapter, which looks more closely at photosynthesis.